I know what the title said, but hear me out. 7.1 Black Mage was like, here, if you ask me. I think we were getting the hang of it. Wasn't perfect, but it was fine. Then the 7.2 live letter happened, and we all thought it'd be like way down here. But now after 2 weeks, and it's really like here, right? So I'm not wrong. Get 20% off with Rogue Energy? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, folks of Final Fantasy XIV. There's a lot to unpack. Starting with the obvious, timers are gone. Thunderhead and Firestarter are permanently active until you press their respective buttons, and likewise with the stance timer. In fact, there's no way to turn it off aside from changing your job or dying. Everything that wasn't already instant or a 2 or 3 spell has been dropped down to a base 2-second cast time. Yes, everything. Apparently someone didn't think Flare being dropped down to 3 seconds for the first time in ever was enough, so they brought it down a whole nother second. And believe me, we're definitely gonna be coming back to Flare. The other change we had in 7.1 was Despair becoming instant at level 100. Now that its cast is 2 seconds before that, kinda made the trait a bit anticlimactic when you get it. As a result of all this, slide casting and moving around has become incredibly easy to do. We'll also be coming back to this later. Fire 3 and Blizzard 3 have been buffed to 290. Fire 4 and Blizzard 4 have been nerfed to 300, but the faster cast times ended up increasing Fire 4's potency per second output, making it a shadow buff for it, really. Ley lines now only last 20 seconds. We'll also be coming back. We're going to be coming back to a lot of things. Like I said, a lot to unpack. Fowl's AoE drop-off has been reduced to just 25%, making it a new spell that's a gain on 2 now. So Freeze is now the only one that's a gain on 3. Xenoglossy got buffed to 890. Enhanced Enochian 3 from level 86 to 95 has been nerfed from 25% to 22% bonus magic damage. Paradox no longer gives an elemental stack, but it got buffed to 540, matching Fire 4 in AF3. Enhanced Enochian 4 has been nerfed from 32% way down to 27%. Flare Star ended up getting buffed to 500, applying it under AF3, and you have it be our strongest spell at 900 potency. A little bit stronger than Xenoglossy. Considering the faster cast speeds, it makes sense a little bit why Enochian got nerfed. A little bit. Overall, Black Mage damage ended up buffed by a little bit anyway. With faster Fire 4s, meaning faster Flare Stars, meaning more on-demand damage and burst. And on the topic of fast, there's been a surprising development as it turns out higher spell speed builds have ended up on top. Not by a massive amount, but by a notable one that I think we should at least cover. Before I go any further, I want to have this big disclaimer because players sure do love hearing when something is better and turn it into a black and white decision and think this choice is the best and only choice and the other is dog shit. When that's almost never the case, especially with Black Mage. There being no bad stat still rings true for this job. Like before, we still have a choice between high spell speed or high crit for the best builds, with a notable amount of choice for your desired GCD. But something you'll note is now the damage difference between them is being pointed out with spell speed as the strongest set. Not by a lot, it's only a 1.02% difference. If you've been around the game for as long as I have, that alone is enough of a surprise. In the past, these damage differences were often never directly stated since it tends to be so small that it's not worth mentioning. I recall the difference between high spell speed and high crit builds to have a 0.5% DPS difference all the way back in Stormblood. The difference has only gotten smaller and smaller as the years go by, with it culminating up in Dawntrail and 7.1, where the difference was around 0.2% and it wasn't even between high spell speed and high crit, just the best and worst choices to emphasize how little it matters. but that gets flipped on its head in this patch with the biggest difference I've seen. Back to that disclaimer, this doesn't mean every single Black Mage needs to be going high spell speed or bust. Again, the difference is 1.02%. It's just surprising seeing it be that large, relatively speaking. A strength of Black Mage is that it's the only job that can comfortably be free in its builds and choice. As long as you're shooting for the highest eye level you can get your hands on at first, you're doing great. Spell speed plays a big role in how the job feels. Many players actually thought that spell speed may be dead and everyone may as well just focus on crit since casts are fast anyway. But I wasn't convinced. Black Mage is still a GCD focused job with on-demand burst and no OGCDs or gauge setup that require a specific lining up within your rotation to be as best as it can be. I believe that spell speed would still be at least as strong as it was before. Sure, I'm biased, but what do you know, I was right. I've gotten mostly used to it, and I have to say, I'm having fun. The changes didn't make the job really worse. Yeah, we doom posted too hard. It's expected. I'm sure we all got it out of our system by now. There are some benefits I can find with this semi-rework. It's more safer for players to choose no speed full crit builds and not have the prior worries of not being able to perform it at all. Movement is more on demand where you can adjust as needed without needing to sacrifice your optimized rotation, and it almost feels as if a tiny bit of non-standard was sprinkled into the standard rotation. Though I'm sure that was unintended. And speed builds feel even faster, it's like we're on hyper mode at times. However, many vocal Black Mage enjoyers tend to favor high crit and slow speed no matter what. And I can see the appeal. Number go bigger. Number feel bigger. Hit harder because slower. Nuclear bombs of crit instead of the Katyusha rockets of spell speed. Oppenheimer would be, well, rolling in his grave, probably. Now, Kissinger, on the other hand, that just might be why many Black Mage players have felt rather displeased with the changes. With casts being much faster, it kind of forces those that enjoyed the slower casting to feel different. Where some got satisfaction over charging up those attacks for more critical hits, the faster casting kind of removes that feeling. And that's a major part to what's going on here, the feeling we had. As someone who's always favored spell speed for my personal feel, I can still sympathize with the low speed enjoyers and what they're going through. Let's take Flare as a quick example. Flare used to have that emphasis in it being the big fire attack. After all, in Final Fantasy tradition, it is intended to be the strongest fire spell. With 4 seconds of cast time, you felt it when the screen would shake a bit and it finally went out. Was it a bit annoying when mobs would die too fast? Yes. But with 7.1, there was a compromise in lowering it to 3 seconds. This would make sure it wouldn't get interrupted as often, but also, to people's surprise, and surely not the dev's intention, that it would end up being a pre-level 60 to spare. It's an actual Fireline finisher before you got Fire 4. While making the level 50 section of the guide, which you should definitely go watch right now. Yes, it's kind of outdated information, but I did spend 8 months on it. It made playing level 50 content kinda fun? I mean, where I would have casted a fire anyway at the end, using Flare was better damage, but it made me feel even stronger with ending simple fire spamming with something so powerful. Before this, it was only worth it if you paired it with Swift Cast. Now that it's 2 seconds, even a speed lover like me doesn't really feel that impact as much. Yeah, I'm still pressing the same buttons as before, but the feeling isn't all that there. Oh. That's why monk mains were pissed. I get it now. This push towards more speed has been a bit familiar to me, and that may be why I haven't felt so pressed about these changes compared to many others. That, and I already publicly stated that Black Mage could do machinist levels of damage, and I'm still not getting off of it. Since we're mentioning machinist and other jobs, I gotta ask real quick. What the fuck is going on at CBU 3? Machinist has been infamous this expansion for being in a noticeably bad state in terms of its damage. I'm not a machinist main, so I can't say anything as to exactly why. By all means, actual machinist players are free to explain in the comments. I'd love to learn more. But I can still notice when every expert roulette I'm in takes 10 minutes longer because I'm paired with a machinist. And just by looking at this. Oh, I apologize. This is for the last patch. Here's 7.2, and it's still bad. With no actual single target buffs, and instead, a nerf on their main AoE weapon skill, and they removed the increase in its damage from a trait added this expansion. Again, I'm no expert on this job, but even though I know range tax is a thing and will never really go away, I understand that it being a selfish DPS with no damage utility should be in a better state than this. And on Pictomancer, I've been on the side that this job needs nerfs. It's an overtuned mess that has gone on too strong for too long. In some areas, like Ultimates, it's understandable why it's as strong as it is. It's just part of its design, and there's no changing that anytime soon without a full-scale rework. Not that the devs are seemingly against that these days. While Pictomancer did get an overall damage nerf, I don't think anyone wanted it like this. Hammer motif is now a loss in full uptime, making the general recommendation for Pictomancers to avoid using it and save it for burst windows, depending on the situation. I couldn't even believe it. Even looking at the sheet going around detailing how much of a PPS loss it is. Now, you can't convince me that this was intentional. It's not new that when it comes to balance changes, some rotations are just unintended side effects that become core for many players in high-end rating. And while unintended, some tend to go ignored for too long still. And this brings it back to Black Mage and my earlier question. What the fuck is going on at CBU 3? I don't think there's been a patch in the past where the disconnect between the players and the devs have been felt this hard. In the end, I was coming around to accepting the changes 7.2 would bring, and I wanted to know the reasoning behind such a semi-rework, especially given that it wasn't even mentioned during the live letter itself. So going on to the job guide and seeing the reasons made me so much more furious than the actual changes. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. But reading this has more or less blackpilled me into believing the devs don't actually play the game. Future battle design may cause difficulty with casting spells, so we have shortened the cast time for a variety of actions. Furthermore, the effect expiration of Astral Fire and Umbral Ice has been largely detrimental to attack power in situations where players must interrupt casting to address battle mechanics. For this reason, these statuses will no longer expire. Now, at first, I was pretty pissed reading this. There have been a lot of fights in the past that have huge amounts of movement, even for previous iterations of Black Mage, that I would practically beg to be fake melee in the static. It was hard for me to imagine just how much movement this future battle design would have affected us. This is why this video is coming out now instead of after the week of 7.2 launch. Doing the story mode of Cruiserweight and the Underkeep made me not convinced. 90% of M5 is half-room cleaves. You can get to any safe spot in any fight if you know what you're doing ahead of time. So just like how Black Mage has always been. And every single boss in the Underkeep is stand in the center and let thing resolve.
We'll be safe enough once we make the jump to hyperspace. Besides, I know a few maneuvers. We'll lose them.
That was your maneuver? Moving slightly to the left?
Well, I mean, we're not in the same place we were, huh? That ought to confuse them.
Yeah, but you hardly did anything. You just started listing lazily to the left. I'm pretty sure they can keep up.
Where do they go?
There they are. They're listing lazily to the left. Go left, left!
Boy, this guy knows some maneuvers.
Seriously, it's all half-room cleaves. Just move a pixel to either side and you're fine. So with the faster casting and making slide casting even easier, I wasn't feeling convinced. Where is this battle design? Of course, it's probably in Savage, not the more casual content intended to be cleared by everyone. So I delayed finishing this until after I threw myself on, and I can kind of see it. Doing Zilenia Extreme and M5S, I can see the great amount of movement and even moments of forced downtime where I end up wondering if I could keep up with the fast pace if we were still on previous Black Mage. The fights themselves have proven to be fun in either difficulty. Dawntrail has really been showing that. It's having a heavy focus on the fights themselves, and I gotta give them credit where credit is due. The content itself that we have gotten by now has been really fun. Now moving on to ley lines, it became a charge-based action, which has resulted in movement restriction lasting longer than intended, so we have reduced its duration. It was reduced from 30 to 20 seconds. From what everyone assumed, the reasoning would be to fit more in burst windows. But this shows that the dev's reasoning is more about wanting to be tied to ley lines less. This may not seem like a big deal, but read it again. Movement restriction lasting longer than intended. They didn't intend to make Black Mages stay even more still than before with the addition of the second charge. But no Black Mage player thought about that. We saw the benefits of a second charge with higher damage potential, making that extra charge work to our advantage so we can figure out when best to use it on a fight-by-fight and player-by-player basis. Even so, seasoned players should know about slide casting and understanding your pixel-sized hitbox to better utilize that area. And with Retrace added, it didn't seem like a concern when it came to staying still. Now, this doesn't really change how anyone uses ley lines. You still use it in your opener like before. You still use it in burst windows. You still use that extra charge where you can best. But it's CBU3's intentions that I want to focus on. It's been made more and more clear with this patch that the way the devs think about balance and job design is much different than how many in the player base do and have been doing for years. With many balance patches, it becomes more clear that the devs just don't use our DPS as a metric. Probably any actual DPS measurements. They don't put into consideration downtime versus uptime, raid buff lineups, and how some jobs benefit better than others for it. Party comp metas. You get the picture. They test jobs using just the raw damage output. Perhaps use a standard 2 range, 2 melee, 2 healer, 2 tank comp, and call it a day with balance. Otherwise, machinists wouldn't still be in the shitter for so long, because they only look at the raw damage and think that's just good enough. And every role has their own specific reason for said damage. At times, I wonder if the team that designs the actual fights are even communicating with the team that's designing or balancing the jobs. And even then, I'm wondering if that team is even communicating with each other. I've spent so many months of this expansion having a big crusade defending the expansion and Black Mage. I actually liked the 7.0 story. I like Wuklamant as a character. I can't really understand why others don't. Backspace your comment about why you don't like the story of Wuklamant. I genuinely do not care. The dungeons, trials, and raids have been real creative. Juno is one of the best 24-mans and one I like doing just for fun since Weeping City. The post-patch story has been... I
will save the head soul!
The Alexandria stuff has been great. But when it comes to the actual jobs, this patch alone has really dampened that faith I had in the team. This is arguably my favorite game of all time, and I'm not calling it quits. But I do understand why so many others are. The game isn't dying by a long shot, but it isn't perfect either. It's a rushed remake of an unoptimized MMO that started development 20 years ago. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's bring this all back to Black Mage. My last video had a lot of opinions from either side when it came to Black Mage, and many in between. And all of your takes and opinions are just as valid. There's some good to see with the changes we got, and some bad. Some liking them, some hating them, and I do like hearing people out with what they gotta say or how they feel. I won't, however, give any care or attention to people that are just gonna trash on others for said opinion on the changes. Like it or hate it, the changes are here and they're going to stay. So now that we've gotten our hands on it, how's it feeling? What exactly has changed? With the stance timer removed, no need to worry about maintaining your stance, so it's opened the door for a few changes to the openers and rotation to a degree. Starting with the opener, we're able to put out 2 Flare Stars while skipping the initial Despair and Paradox. Since Flare Star is the strongest spell now, the damage output is a considerable improvement over the previous one. I tested the difference between both myself and noticed a faster kill time on the M4 Savage striking dummy by 10 seconds with the double Flare Star opener. The new opener itself is about a 9% increase in damage compared to the previous one, so it can't be ignored. But since we skipped the first Paradox, we're left with no Firestarter to take through Ice Phase. So how do we fix this? By using Fire Paradox after the Transpose to get Firestarter back, and then using AF1 F3P. You'll be doing this until the next mana font where you won't have to do this after. With faster casting, fire spells won't get a PPS boost with instant cast abilities, so we don't use them as much as we did before. Now they're almost relegated to pure movement. But if you're familiar enough with Black Mage, again, you just need to understand slide casting and your pixel-sized hitbox, knowledge that has been part of the game for 12 years, you'll find yourself almost never using these abilities. Even I didn't feel much of a need to use them in M5S, and as I felt I could slide cast enough. My uptime wasn't perfect, but it's nothing more practice can't fix. So what can we do to make these abilities not so useless? Why, transpose into Umbral Ice, of course. Blizzard 3's cast time is still uber long outside of Fire Stance, so we pair that transpose with a swift cast, or even a triple cast stack, and we avoid the damage penalty of Astral Fire. And yes, you can use one or the other for every ice phase while still having a triple cast stack available. This makes transpose even more of a part of the actual rotation, and making standard lines a little bit more involved. At least that's how it feels to me. Hi, I'm just going to interject real quick off script. When I said you can have a triple and a swift for every ice phase available. Now, I mean, that's generally true for like dungeons and trials and definitely M5 Savage for sure. Every fight with like an asterisk, you know what I mean? M6 Savage is not one of these fights. Absolutely not. It's so fast. It's so fucking fast. One minute I'm in the, in one corner of the arena, and then I have to be on my clock spot like in like less than a second, or else I just fuck everybody up. And during the first 2 minutes in Desertscape, I can't even put the ley lines down anywhere. Like, I can't even put the fucking thing down at any point. It's like, do you want me to use it for 2-minute burst windows? No, but I remember earlier, no, actually, they don't want us to use it for that. So, I mean, I'm kind of at a fucking loss. Get me out of here! Both the Swift Cast Opener and the Triple Cast Opener have been updated to fit these changes, one being more suited for high crit and the other for high speed. There's also an alternative version of the new opener that uses a single-use flare in order to prevent having to double Paradox, with just a 1% loss. Playing Black Mage like before is still possible, but with no need to maintain the timer, it kinda made a few of the buttons kind of weightless? Is that the right word? While Paradox was buffed to 540, matching AF3 Fire 4, it makes it nothing more than a gimme Firestarter button. And since it has the same potency, you can sometimes cast an extra Fire 4 by mistake. But you're not punished for that. You can just use the double Paradox Ice line to get Firestarter back and move on. Triple Cast used to be a really cool ability you would get to use as a personal damage buff during Burst, but most will probably find them never pressing it again. As I mentioned before, the faster Despair before level 100 makes turning it into an instant cast a bit anticlimactic, and not as game-changing as when we first felt it last patch. And with no need to refresh the timer, it's now more of a button you use when there's nothing else to press. Umbral Soul's value has weakened quite a bit, really. No stance timer means there's not much of a need to use it during downtime to save your rotation. Just keep yourself at AF3 and continue on, if you still have any MP left. The faster flares, as I mentioned before, has had that weight removed, though it does feel a bit cool that the AoE rotation is so fast, it's like I'm throwing out 3 spells at once. Oh right, speaking about the AoE rotation, High Fire 2 and High Blizzard 2 are... That's right, they're still awful! And guess what? Now with faster flare, they're worse than before. Why? Because they didn't get touched at all. What the fuck is going on at CBU3? Sorry, I lost my composure. Level 50 gameplay hasn't really changed. Fire 1's PPS is untouched, though at least catching your fire starters is a little bit easier, now that the buff is applied a bit earlier, and casting Flare as a finisher is stronger and smoother. Level 60 is where it gets a tiny bit funky. In a previous video, I predicted that level 60 to 89, Fire 1 would end up being a button you'd stop pressing. Even if you got a Firestarter proc for every line, a 7th Fire 4 would deal better damage, and that really is the case. It's just 7 Fire 4s, Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Fire 3, repeat. No Fire 1s or any F3Ps. And once you finally get Paradox at level 90 is when you get back to using Fire 1, but like I said, it's now just a gimme Firestarter button. Man, whoever's in charge of this job now really didn't like Endwalker. While I've warmed up to 7.2 Black Mage and already being a speed fan helped with that, if I had the choice, I would definitely revert all this. Given how these changes didn't get any mention makes it feel like how this job has worked for the past decade means little to the devs. With almost every action we've gotten in the past all about maintaining your timer or playing around with it, it's almost scary how easy it was, in the middle of an expansion, to remove that near core part of the design. I brought up in the past that, yes, a rework was coming for Black Mage. If this job was first released in Endwalker, or even during Stormblood, it wouldn't be near to what it was like then. There's a desire within the devs to rework this job, but what we've gotten now doesn't feel like there was much thought behind these decisions. I just gotta maintain the hope with 8.0 and their promise of better job identity then. But I am getting really tired of waiting. By all means, like the video if you like it, comment your thoughts, opinions, and everything in between. If I got any information wrong, feel free to correct me. I always love improving. And subscribe to keep up with more of my ramblings because you're definitely going to be hearing from me when 7.3 is around the corner. I'm going to be working on an updated level 100 quick guide to cover the basics, a sequel to the full guide, and to catch our minimum item level raid clears. But if you want to watch our prog live, I stream min-eye level no echo raiding every Monday and Tuesday, along with Soulsborne content and other RPGs every weekday at 3 p.m. Central over on Twitch. I'm going to be starting plans to 100% every single Soulsborne game in one playthrough each. And I'm going to do the same for every Kingdom Hearts game too after. Feel free to chat with me there too. Twitch is my main platform after all. Until then, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night everyone.